Ali Harbi Ali and Axel Rudakabana slipped through the net. Two very different cases with the same outcome. 4 people are dead and many more people are traumatised from those 2 cases. What concrete changes has Prevent made since?
You can never rule out human error, but the changes that have been made since then to processes, procedures, guidance, training, I think have minimised the chances that those sorts of errors are going to occur again.
Rudakabana murdered 3 girls at a dance workshop in Southport last summer. With no evidence of ideological purpose, he wasn't sentenced as a terrorist. But as early as 14 years old, he was taking an interest in terrorism and showing signs of violent characteristics. If the government takes up the recommendations from the latest review on its anti-terrorism scheme, Rudakabana would have been accepted onto Prevent rather than rejected 3 times, as he was 3 years before the Southport attack.
What we've seen over the last few years is that the nature of terrorism has changed. We're not seeing the big al-Qaeda-directed plots that we used to see. It's people doing it for themselves with simple weapons like knives or vehicles. And we're seeing ideologies that once used to be complicated and difficult to acquire, now being acquired through social media in a sort of mishmash way.
As the threat evolves, the response has to evolve. But are the resources there? Can Prevent manage all of this?
I think the resources have to be there. We have a huge counter-terrorism apparatus in this country. It costs more than £3 billion a year. Only 3% of that is spent on Prevent. And I've seen how well Prevent can work. If you get an intervention provider, a mentor, who is brought into the life of a young person, it can save so much grief, so much suffering.
Ali Harbi Ali, inspired by the Islamic State, murdered the MP David Amess in 2021.
Is this a terrorist attack?
I mean, I guess, yeah, I killed an MP.
Years before, he'd been referred to Prevent by his school. But then came one failing after the next. Poor judgment, poor communication, and poor follow-through, says today's report. Information sharing and engagement should be improved, it recommends. Harbi Ali also managed to convince staff that he wasn't a threat. The report refers to a phrase, disguised compliance, which is a fancy phrase, I suppose, for tricking the system. That raises questions about adequate levels of training.
You can do a certain amount with training, and it's very important we do, and I've in fact recommended we do a bit more. And we've had 3 cases now of people who've been through Prevent who have effectively fooled Prevent. I think the answer to that is spending as much time with the person as you can, trying to see them in an environment, for example, the home or the school.
The scheme needs to adapt to an online world, says Lord Anderson, where so much radicalisation happens. 40% of people referred are aged between 11 and 15. The Home Secretary says she'll immediately act on the report's findings.
Well, earlier I spoke to the Labour peer and former director of the human rights group Liberty, Baroness Chakrabarti, and began by asking her what she made of the review of the Prevent programme.
Well, I think we need to remember that David Anderson, Lord Anderson, is a very well-respected practitioner in this area. He isn't going for headlines, he's going for a methodical analysis of what's been going wrong with these programmes. He's made some recommendations. I hope they'll be taken on board, but I think there is probably a deeper philosophical point as well, that we can't just be obsessed about terrorism. We need to think about violence more generally and safeguarding more generally. And at least one of these 2 horrific cases, referrals were not proceeded with because the individual couldn't be properly linked to sort of terrorist ideology. And if we're not careful, on the one hand, we call protesters terrorists, and on the other hand, we don't deal with people who are capable of very extreme crimes like murder.
Now, he does give the organisation the benefit of the doubt, despite the fact there were very, very clear and sort of terrible, obvious failings. Harbi Ali, who killed the MP Sir David Amess, was referred to Prevent. 7 mentoring sessions were organised. Only 1 actually took place. As you say, Rudakabana was referred to Prevent by worried teachers, desperately concerned about his interest in terrorism and violence, but he was rejected 3 times. I mean, is Prevent fit for purpose in your view?
I have real concerns that it isn't, not least because it suffers in two ways now in terms of public trust. So certain minority groups, perhaps British Muslims in particular, feel that they have over the years been targeted and unfairly treated. But on the other hand, you will now have the public saying, and you've had these individuals who've gone on to be incredibly violent and perpetrate these terrible murders, who have been referred and then not properly carried through. I think there should be a fundamental overhaul, and I think there should be something else that isn't prevent. I think even the brand is pretty tarnished right now.
You've touched on this already, but David Anderson echoes what the Prime Minister said after the Southport attacks, that terrorism has changed, that Prevent should be dealing with people who show a fascination with terrorism or extreme violence, even when they have no discernible ideology. But can that be done by Prevent, do you think? Should it be done?
I'm not sure that Prevent is necessarily the right vehicle. We need to think about serious propensity and fascination with violence more generally. And if everything is terrorism, nothing is terrorism.
So in your view, the government is not getting this right on a number of fronts. What about the fact that the Prime Minister has removed the whip currently from 4 MPs? There may be more for voting against the planned welfare cuts. I mean, what's your response to that?
Well, that's politics rather than terrorism. But I personally think it's a mistake to remove the whip from too many people for a bit of dissent within the party. The Labour Party has always been a broad church, even under the former Prime Minister Tony Blair. I think to be too ready to remove the whip, and to remove the whip for a long time from MPs is going to alienate them and not actually achieve discipline, let alone unity.